Hello, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. And yeah, I always say it. I always look back and say, this is a very extra special guest, but I'm not even going to say that today because if you don't understand and recognize the name, how powerful this guest is, you have to be under a rock for your lifetime. So we have the one and the only Tom Ziglar joining us today. I'm honored. Yes, I'm a little excited. And yeah, I'm actually nervous. Hi, this is Rod Santomassimo, and welcome to the Massimo Show. The objective of the Massimo Show is to share how you can maximize your personal, professional margin. That's right. Let's make more money in less time. Let's turn chaos into clarity, confusion into income into real wealth. Along with sharing my insight on how I grew a multi-million-dollar professional business, we're going to bring you the expert advice from a variety of authors, consultants, and thought leaders who will provide the tools you need to maximize your own personal and professional margin. Welcome to the Massimo Show. Tom Ziglar, son, of course, of Zig Ziglar. Tom, welcome to the Massimo Show.
Rod, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. What an honor and blessing.
Well, the blessing is all ours, sir. And so we're going to jump right into it. Our format, as always, is getting to know you first and foremost. The audience relates to you. And so, Tom, if you can, besides telling us about yourself, I want to go back to your teen years and tell us what you're doing back then.
Oh, wow. Well, I was in school, like a lot of people. In high school, I started playing golf. My father and I played a ton of golf together and ended up going to college, playing golf in college. Loved it. Loved that sport my whole life. I got a sales job at the Athlete's Foot at Valley View Mall when I was 16.
Tom, I want to stop right there. I got a sales job at the Athlete's Foot at the Smith Haven Mall when I was 16.
You're kidding me.
I'm not kidding you.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so here's a story. So of course I'm raised by maybe the greatest salesman who ever sold, and 16 years old, we're making a low salary, it's per hour or whatever. And then they come in and they say, we're going to pay 1% bonus when you sell a shoe and 3% when you sell clothes. So guess what I sold that month?
You were selling clothes.
I sold clothes all month. You get what you incentivize.
You
I still remember that.
Tom, we didn't talk before then, so here you go. Two former Athlete's Foot salesmen. Awesome. This is, wow, a small world. So, tell us that. Where was the mall? Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Dallas, Texas. The mall was Valley View Mall in Dallas, and Dad moved us here when I was 3. So 1968, lived here my whole life. And I tell people the best part about being from Dallas is you can travel anywhere in the world and the scenery's better.
I don't think that's true. Okay.
It's true.
Now, when you were growing up, it's amazing. Tom, I should have known before, and I apologize. Do you have children?
I do. I have a daughter, Alexandra, who is 25. And she works in the business. So I get to work with my daughter. I've been married 32 years to my wife, Chachas. So it's the three of us. And I got a grand puppy. So Alexandra's, she's got a golden doodle. So
there you go, the golden doodle.
Every now and then we get to babysit. So I like that.
Well, I can't imagine. So when you were growing up, seeing your father and certainly your daughter seeing you, because my kids will actually say, wait, Dad, wait a minute. People actually pay to hear you speak and actually buy books that you write. And like, yeah, kids, thanks for keeping me humble. So did you have that sense? And then did your daughter have that sense regarding the following first your father had and that you have?
Yeah, I think we all come through that. Of course, it was a little bit different with Dad because, he kind of hit big time 74, 75 when I was 9 or 10. So it was just kind of the reality. And I'd go and there'd be, 20,000 people in the room going nuts. And I'm like, yeah, that's Dad. Later in life, I realized just how unique and how special that was. And one of the things, this happened all the time, is people would come up to us when we were traveling or we were somewhere and they would interrupt for a minute. And it was never off-putting. It was never like in your face or in your space. And they would always say the same thing. I heard you, Zig, blah, blah, blah. You changed my life. And then they would tell him, thank you. And you know what? That's not an interruption. I mean, you just tell me how many times you get bothered with people telling you that you made a difference in their life. Well, then I started speaking. I've only been speaking for like 10 years. So I remember 6 or 7 years ago, my daughter was, what was she, 18 or 19? I heard her tell my wife, she didn't know I could hear her. She's like, Dad's getting pretty good. So I know what you mean. It's like, oh, and that meant more than anything, but we're just dad, right? We're just who they grew up with.
Well, with your dad, to you was just dad. And of course, to millions of people across the globe, he was Zig. That's who he was. So if you can, share with the audience, let's talk a little bit about your dad, a little bit. I want to focus on you, but who was Zig Ziglar? And where did this whole concept of personal improvement, sales, where did it all originate? How did it become the genesis of what was this amazing, this transcends every generation, every business. What he has accomplished is just, it's the one and only. I mean, he is the one and only. So what was the genesis that you can recall? And what were some of the key things he did to create this whole brand of Zig?
Yeah. So I'll try to put a quick summary on 86 years. In the audio program we have called Born to Win, I think he says it's either 7 times or 11 times. This is a live recording. He says, I've walked in your shoes 7 times. And so what he's really telling the audience is, hey, I struggled just like you. And so, he was born in LA, Lower Alabama. He grew up in Yazoo City, Mississippi. His dad died when he was 5. This is the heart of the Great Depression. He was raised by his mom, the 10th of 12 kids. His mom had a 5th grade education. So think about it. He told me late in life that they were the second poorest family in Yazoo City. He never did well in school. He goes into the Navy at the end of World War II, gets out, goes to college, doesn't do well in college, doesn't graduate from college, gets married, gets a sales job. And for 2.5 years, he didn't sell anything. Well, he said he sold his car, he sold his furniture. Right. And then a man named P.C. Merrill pulled him aside at a convention, and Dad respected this man. And he put his hands on Dad's shoulder and he said, Zig, in all my years, I've never seen such a waste. But if you believed in yourself and went to work on a regular schedule, you could be a champion. And so that was the first time that anybody in that position of authority that Dad respected told him he could be a champion. So that was the day he went to work trying to figure out what it meant to believe in yourself. And he also made the commitment to start work every day at the same time. So that year, he finished number 2 out of 7,000 salespeople. In the previous 2.5 years, he'd never been in the top 5,000. And so when Dad would say, I've walked in your shoes, what he meant was, I've had my car repossessed. I've had my lights turned off. I've struggled and struggled and struggled. And then one day, somebody spoke into my life and said, if you believe in yourself. And so that was his mission, is to help people understand that they have these amazing gifts and abilities within them already that just need to be recognized, claimed, and developed, and then put to use. So that was kind of his start. And so that's why he connected so well with everyday people. Because life is hard. It's unfair, right? I mean, we get sick, relationships break, the job that we wanted goes away. And yet some people, they make it, right? They become very successful. So it has to do with your character, your integrity, your attitude, your mindset. That's what Dad was about his whole life. And that's why people loved him, because he told them his struggles and his failures, and then what changed so that they could then go to the level that, whatever their level in life is, that they could achieve.
This an incredible story. And we're going to jump in some of those habits that Tom shares with his audience now in our second session with the Massimo Show. But before we get there, Tom, you talked about your dad. Now, how many siblings do you have?
I have 3 sisters. My oldest sister passed away 25 years ago.
Very sorry.
I'm the baby by 10 years. So
there's a theory that it's hard to be a prophet in your own village. And you apply it to the family dynamic. It's, that's just mom and dad telling us that. But like, for example, I'm sure your daughter at one time said, no, you're absolutely wrong. You don't understand. But if someone else told her the same exact thing, she'd say, you see, they're right. So, and as a parent, no one's a parent knows that's the fact. In your house, I should be raised by your father, the one and only Zig Ziglar. Was it hard for him to be, could he be that prophet in his own village? Did you hear him and say, yeah, it's got to be that way? Or were you like most kids and said, nah, Dad, that's not it?
I would say all the Ziglar kids were normal.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm like discovering things every day. And I'm like, he told me that when I was 12. I'm 54. It only took 42 years to sink in. It's like everybody's different, but Dad had a way of saying it that you wouldn't forget. You may not be ready to hear it, which is where a lot of people are. You got to be ready. You've got to be sick and tired of the way things are going. Or what I like is you got to be in a place of wisdom where you're like, you know what? Why do I need to cut my own path through the woods here when there's a clearly marked trail that a lot of successful people have already blazed?
That is awesome. That's one of the many quotes I'm taking from this session today. Okay, Tom, hang on tight. We got a lot to talk about. Want to get into, I'll see your book, Choose to Win, but also share some tangibles with our audience of what it takes to succeed in today's ultra competitive and yes, digital world. So when we come back to our second part with the one and only Tom Ziglar. Till then, hang on. This is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Group. And did you know over the last 12 plus years, we've worked with thousands of independent contractors, solopreneurs, and small business owners in helping them achieve the business and the life that they've always desired. To learn more how we could possibly help you achieve your goals, please visit www.massimo.coach. That's www.massimo.coach. Hello, this is Rod Santomassimo, back with the one and only Tom Ziglar, author of Choose to Win, a book that came out this year. I want to dive into the book, the genesis of the book, lessons from the book. So, Tom, tell us about Choose to Win. Why that title? Why that theme? What's that all about?
Yeah. The byline of Choose to Win is you can transform your life one simple choice at a time. And that's what I believe. I believe that winning is a choice. And a little background on the book, the original title was Live to Win. Dad wrote the book Born to Win. A friend of mine said, hey, I got your title for your book. It's Live to Win. We sent it to the publisher. And they come back and they say, Live to Win's an okay title, but we've got one that really resonates, Choose to Win. And in the beginning of it, I was like, oh no, I like my title better. And then I started saying it and speaking about it. And it's the best title ever because it's action, right? And literally I can see in the audience when I speak, I can see this little flicker in their eyes where they've suddenly realized, hey, wait a second, me going where I want to go, that's a choice, right? That's not luck. It's not fate. It's not, somebody helping me. It's a decision. It's a choice to go there. And once we take ownership of that choice in all areas of life, that's when we start making great progress. And so that's what the book is about. First, why do we want to make the choice? What's the big reason that propels us? And then the different areas of life that we need to really focus on. Because if we've always taught at Ziglar, balanced success. What's the point if you've got tons of money and no health and no family? I mean, it's just no point in it. And so the choices that we talk about in the book encompass every area of life.
Fantastic. So, and I love this choice, but for some folks, they struggle with making choices. Maybe their own worst enemy, they have their own demons, whatever it might be. So how do we outline a path to choose well?
So I'm having dinner with Dan Miller, who wrote 48 Days to the Work You Love, and his grandson, Caleb. And Caleb's like 24, 25. And one of the key quotes of the book is this: the fastest way to success is to replace a bad habit with a good habit. That's the fastest way. And so he asked me this question. He says, Tom, how do you know if you have a bad habit? So this is a 24-year-old. And it was actually one of the most clarifying questions you can ask. Because let's think about it. If your goal is to get lung cancer, then smoking is a great habit. And so here's the reality. What's your goal? What is it that you want to accomplish? What's the type of relationships you want to have in your family? What's the health that you want to have in your physical life? What's your mindset? What's the goal that you want to have in your mindset? I mean, do you want to have fear and anxiety and worry and being afraid all the time? Or do you want to be positive and outgoing and upbeat and optimistic? And so as soon as you identify your purpose, your why, your goal, your dream, your aspiration, whatever it is, as soon as you identify that, then that clarifies the habits you need to build. Here's just a simple question that Dad nailed me on when I was a kid. I was 19 And I come home and I'm taking care of the house during the summer. And Dad comes in and he says, "Hey, your mom and I are going to Australia for a speaking tour. We're going to be gone 3 weeks. You're going to be in charge here." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, Dad, Australia's dangerous. Those people are mean and your bags are heavy. You need a 19-year-old man to come carry your bags and protect you, right?" I'm putting on the sales pitch. He could have told me anything. He could have said no, but he asked me a question. He said, "Son, is your goal still to be a professional golfer?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "And because of that goal, I know that you have tournaments this summer lined up, you have practice sessions lined up, and you're working with Hank Haney, who's very hard to schedule. Would going to Australia, would that get you closer to or further from your goal?" And of course, I didn't go to Australia, but he made me say, "You're right." And so that's the point, is a lot of people wander because they don't have a clearly defined goal or objective. And so they don't know if what they're doing is taking them closer to or further from where they want to be in life, because they're not heading anywhere. Dad said, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time.
So is that in the path to win? And you said yourself, winning is defined by a variety of metrics: life, family, relationships. Certainly wealth can be considered one of those. There's different definitions of wealth. Is it, number one, set the goal, set the vision?
Number one is to really understand your why. And the why informs your goals, and your goals inform your behavior, right? What you're going to do. How are you going to get there? And a lot of times, people will start setting a bunch of goals, and I'll look at it and it'll be like, goal number one, have 10% body fat, be able to, great fitness, get a A+ score from the doctor blood work, right? And goal number two is win the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. It's just, your goals have to be in alignment, right? And so what's your big purpose? Why are you doing those goals in the first place? And hopefully it aligns with your faith and your family and the things that are really important.
It's a great insight, Thomas. You're going to coach the coach here, because our clients, we ask why before we get engaged in a relationship. And it's amazing how many clients, their why is, I want to make a certain amount of money. I want to make $1 million or $10 million or $100,000, whatever the number might be. And we have to stop and pause and wait, no. Let's get to the why. So can you help the audience understand more what the why means? It's not in some cases, this target financial out there that, because what that can do to change their life, they don't even think about that. It's a number they set for some arbitrary reason. So help us understand the element of defining the why.
Yeah, and I'll use that example, that illustration. In our corporate history, we've done a lot of sales training. So we were working with a VP of sales. The proposal was to come in and do sales training for his team. And so we said, "Hey, if we come in and do the sales training, what do you want the result to be?" And he said, "Well, we've got a stretch goal. I want to grow our sales by 10%. So we said, "Well, why do you want to grow your sales by 10%? And he said, "Well, then we'll all keep our jobs. We'll all get a bonus. We'll have And I'll go, "Great. That's fantastic. That's a great why. So what happens if you do that again next year?" And he says, "Oh, well, then I'll be able to pay off some debt, and more bonuses and more growth." And so we said, "Well, why do you want to pay off some debt?" And then he said, "Well, then I can buy the lake house." And I said, "Well, why do you want the lake house?" And then his whole countenance changed. He said, "Well, then the grandkids will be able to come over and play." And so that's the why behind the why. For people listening, you've just got to dig in and say, well, why do I want to make more money? Because if you think that's going to get rid of the stress and all that stuff, it's going to be a different kind of stress. It's going to be a different kind of worry. It's going to be different kind of issues. So why do you want to make the money? One of our partners, Howard Partridge, says this: your business or your career exists for one reason only, as a vehicle to help you achieve your life goals. And your life goals have to be taking you to your why. And so that's how we do it. So you just dig in. Why do you want to make more money? What are you going to do with it? What's it going to allow you to do?
Tom, that is absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much. Okay, so Tom, you have a few more minutes for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let me do this. We'll take a short break. We're going to come right back. More time with the one and only Tom Ziglar. We're going to dive into some specifics, and he's going to share some ideas to help you for the new year of 2020. Also, we're going to ask him about other sales gurus, the Tony Robbins, the Grant Cardones, and the newest ones like the Gary Vaynerchuks, and just get a spin and feel for that as well. Because I personally think everything originates back to Zig Ziglar. Okay, hold on, folks. Be right back with the Massimo Show. See you in a few minutes. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. And oh boy, am I pumped. My new book, Knowing Isn't Doing, well, when it launched, it hit #1. That's right. Top selling sales book in the entire country on Amazon.com. We're so excited to share many of our proprietary Massimo methods to allow our readers to start finally building that business and the life they've always desired. To get your own copy or learn more, visit www.knowingisn'tdoing.com. Hey, welcome back to the Massimo Show and the one and only Tom Ziglar as our guest today. We're going to give you some really incredible things to take away and apply right away. He's already shared so much with you. I personally really want you to focus on your why you're doing what you're doing. But Tom, there's so much going on today, and our audience ranges the scope from early 20s to 70s. And sure, so they grew up with your dad, the one and only Zig Ziglar. And then, of course, we had Jim, of course, Rohn. Then you had Tony Robbins, Grant Cardone, Gary Vee. You get this whole wave of thought leadership, sales leadership. But your father really created it all. So when you hear these messages, does it make you smile? Tell me what the impression is when you see all these folks sharing the gospel, which I think personally is the gospel of Zig.
I tell you what, first off, I smile because I can see the stories, I can see the roots, whether it's Joel Osteen or any of these great communicators today. And then also I get excited because I love reading books on research around the way the brain is. And there's so much research that's out now that proves everything that Dad was teaching 40 plus years ago. It's incredible. And of course, everybody, they come out with their own style, their own specific target audience. And that's fine because they all have substance in different areas. We always have focused on Dad checked everything out theologically, psychologically, and physiologically. In other words, is it good for your mind? Is it good for your soul? Is it good for relationships? And then he really espoused the ultimate power of words. And the words that you choose, not only does that fall on the audience, but it falls on you. And so we are very careful in the words that we use. It's always uplifting. It's always positive. It's always something that will help somebody go to the next level. This is kind of a side story, but when Dad was in his 70s, he had diverticulitis and they removed 80% of his colon. And so after that, he told people to call him semicolon, but he's waking up from the anesthesia and he's in the twilight zone. And he said 3 things over and over again. The first one was recounting the story of when he met Mom. The second one was the verse, Romans 8:28, all things work together for good. And the third one was he had this smirk on his face. Miss Lori is his assistant for 35 years. And he says, Miss Lori, I can't believe we didn't record that speech. So it's funny that in that little, 6-hour window where he's coming out of anesthesia, you see his heart, Romans 8:28, his love for Mom, and his greatest fear was he was going to give the greatest talk and it wasn't recorded. And so I ask people, if you're in that state, what are the words that are going to come out of your mouth? So how do you guard against that? 2 things. Number 1 is you choose the right input. Right? We choose the right input. That's number 1 lesson that I learned from Dad. And number 2 is we guard our mind against the wrong input. In other words, if something comes in that doesn't line up, this is what we believe, to God's truth, we reject it. We don't accept it. It doesn't define me. It's not going to inform me on the decisions I'm going to make. And so that's why language is so important. Incredible story. And I mean, just think about it, Tom. If one of those things was, did we record that speech? Your father recognized, I don't know if it was a futuristic thought or whatever, that his legacy and his content would live forever. All he just had to do is record it. Knowing that we know today, and everyone should be recording everything they do, the recording element of what he did is part of his genius. It just was. I mean, he passed away 7 years ago, and we've had 7 or 8 books published since he passed away from transcripts of recordings. Here's another backstory. 25 years ago or so, 3 up-and-coming speakers, they came to hear Dad, and they caught him in the green room, and they said, Mr. Ziglar, whenever we give a speech, it's always a brand new talk wherever we go. So we're always preparing for the next talk. And they said, when you speak, it's like the same 90, 95% every time. Why is that? And Dad looked at him and said, because the truth never changes.
I'm going to clear out a little bit on that because I did my research. But you also shared that you were on a plane with your father once, getting ready for a speech, I believe. I got to remember the story if I get it correctly. And he had this habit of falling asleep right away and then waking up when the wheels went up. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But before a speech, even though it was the same basic speech, he took a different approach to every speech. Can you share some insight on that?
Yeah. So what he would do is, that's why they said, 90% of your speech is always the same. The other 10% was to the audience he was going to. So in that story, 2 weeks before, he talked to the CEO, the EVP, and the vice president of marketing. And he said, what's your theme? What's your conference? What are you trying to accomplish? And so he would take their key words and their goals, and he would incorporate it into his talk. And then he also constantly learning and reading. So he found some articles on their industry and some of the threats that they were coming against. And so he would weave that in, right? He would weave those things into it. That way, everybody in the room knew that not only was Zig Ziglar a legendary speaker, but he prepared just for us.
And to go back to your original comment when we first started out, in some way or another, he was walking in their shoes. He understood where they were. So absolutely beautiful.
And this is a key. He did that intentionally, not because he was worried that the 90% wasn't relevant. He knew it was, but he didn't care whether it was relevant. He cared whether they took it and used it, right? Because change only happens after you use it. And so that 10% was the glue that got people to say, you know what, I think I'll try that. And that's what we forget in life. We get so excited about what we have to say, we forget that really what I should be focused on is how am I going to get them to buy this idea and use it?
Absolutely true. Well, Tom, I can't thank you enough for your insight. So tell us a couple of things before we let you go. First of all, how do folks get to know you? Where can they go to learn more about Tom Ziglar? And yes, your dad's information materials and your book. Where should they go?
Yeah, the best place is to go to Ziglar.com, Ziglar.com, Ziglar.com. A little bit about me, my personal mission statement is to create the atmosphere that allows you to become the person God created you to become. That's what gets me excited. Who I love working with is people who are intentionally building a legacy. I love working with coaches, trainers, and speakers. I mean, that's my deal because legacy is about working with someone, those you love, to help them overcome life's challenges by equipping them to go and do that. That's what legacy is. That's what Dad did for me, and that's the mission of our company.
That's absolutely incredible. The one and only Tom Ziglar, I can't thank you enough for sharing stories about you, leadership, winning in any shape that may come. The book, Choose to Win, is available today. I strongly suggest to everyone, go get the book, read it, and besides reading it, actually implement what it says you should be doing. Until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show. As always, let's move forward. I want to thank you for listening to this version of The Massimo Show. And please, please go out and share this with your friends, your colleagues. Heck, share it with your dog. Just share it. And more importantly, just give me some feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. We all grow from understanding what our audience wants to hear. So until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Group. And did you know over the last 12 plus years, we've worked with thousands of independent contractors, solopreneurs, and small business owners in helping them achieve the business and the life that they've always desired. To learn more how we could possibly help you achieve your goals, please visit www.massimo.coach. That's www.massimo.coach.